Admiral Park Jin-ho stood alone on the observation deck of Luna Command, watching Earth spin slowly in the darkness. The blue planet looked peaceful from here. Beautiful. But Jin-ho knew better. He had served humanity for 43 years, and in all that time, he had watched his people suffer one insult after another. It had been 120 years since humanity joined the Galactic Concord. 120 years of hoping. 120 years of waiting for respect. That never came. The doors behind him opened with a soft hiss. He did not turn around. "Admiral," said a familiar voice. "The reports from the border colonies have arrived." Jin-ho finally turned. His aide, a young officer named Kang Do-hyun, stood at attention with a data pad in his hands. Do-hyun was the captain of a small patrol frigate called the Resolve. He was young, barely 35, but his eyes carried the same tired weight that Jin-ho saw in his own reflection. "How bad?" Jin-ho asked. "The Concord has approved new sanctions. Food imports to our outer colonies will be cut by 60%. They say it is to encourage compliance with trade regulations." Jin-ho closed his eyes. Compliance. That was always the word they used. Humans must comply. Humans must follow the rules. Humans must know their place. "People will starve," Jin-ho said quietly. "Yes, Admiral. They will." On the other side of the galaxy, Ambassador Yoon Hana walked through the grand halls of the Galactic Assembly. The building was enormous, built by the Vrelak thousands of years ago when they first united the stars under their rule. The ceilings rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside. The walls were covered with gold and precious stones. Everything was designed to make visitors feel small. Hana had walked these halls for 15 years. She had memorized every crack in the floor, every statue, every painting. She had come here as a young woman, full of hope that she could change things. Now she was 52 years old, and nothing had changed at all. Her advisor, Dr. Shin Nari, walked beside her. Nari was a xenobiologist who had spent her life studying the alien species of the Concord. She understood them better than anyone. "They will not listen," Nari said softly. "They never do." "I have to try," Hana replied. "The sanctions will kill thousands, maybe millions. I cannot stay silent." The assembly chamber was already full when they arrived. Hundreds of alien delegates sat in their assigned sections. The Vrelak, tall and powerful with gray skin and 4 arms, occupied the highest seats. They had ruled the Concord for 10,000 years and believed it was their right to rule forever. Below them sat the Mithrani, insectoid creatures with sharp minds and sharper claws, and beside them, the Orvan, amphibious beings who controlled most of the galaxy's water trade. The human section was at the very bottom. The worst seats, the smallest space, a reminder of where humanity stood in the galactic order. Hana walked to the speaking platform and waited for permission to address the assembly. It took 20 minutes. Other species were heard first. A Vrelak merchant complained about shipping delays. A Mithrani scientist requested funding for a new research station. An Orvan diplomat discussed water rights on a distant moon. Finally, reluctantly, the assembly speaker acknowledged her. "The human representative may speak." Hana stepped forward. Her heart was beating fast, but her voice was steady. "Honored delegates," she began. "I come before you to discuss the new sanctions imposed on human colonies. These sanctions will restrict food supplies to millions of our people. Children will go hungry. The elderly will suffer. This is not justice. This is cruelty." A low murmur spread through the chamber. Some delegates looked bored. Others looked annoyed. "We have been loyal members of this Concord for over a century," Hana continued. "We have followed every rule. We have paid every tax. We have never raised our weapons against any member species. And yet we are treated like criminals, like animals, like we do not matter." She paused, looking up at the Vrelak section. "I ask you, I beg you to reconsider these sanctions. Show the galaxy that the Concord believes in fairness. Show us that we are truly equals." For a moment, there was silence. Then, from the highest seat, came a sound that made Hana's blood run cold. Laughter. The Vrelak High Delegate, a massive creature named Torvan, was laughing. His 4 arms slapped against his chair as his body shook with amusement. Soon, other Vrelak joined him. Then the Mithrani. Then the Orvan. The entire assembly was laughing at her. Torvan raised one hand, and the laughter slowly died down. He leaned forward, his dark eyes fixed on Hana like she was an insect he was considering crushing. "Little human," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You speak of equality. You speak of fairness. But you do not understand your position. Humans are tolerated in this conquered. You are not respected. Learn the difference." More laughter. More mockery. Hana stood frozen. She had faced rejection before. She had faced dismissal. But this was something else. This was pure contempt. This was hatred wrapped in a smile. She walked back to her seat without another word. Nari reached out and squeezed her hand. "I am sorry," Nari whispered. "Do not be," Hana replied, her voice empty. "Now I know the truth. I think I always knew." Back at Luna Command, Admiral Jinho received another report. This one was marked with the highest security clearance. His hands trembled slightly as he read it. The Vrelak were moving a fleet toward the human border. 40 warships. Their destination was a small colony called New Incheon, home to 2 million people. The report said the Vrelak planned to annex the colony. They would take the planet and remove the humans by force. Jinho set down the datapad and stared out at the stars. For 120 years, humanity had been patient. They had swallowed their pride. They had accepted every insult, every injustice, every humiliation. They had believed that someday, if they were good enough, quiet enough, obedient enough, they would be accepted. But acceptance was never coming. Respect was never coming. The galaxy did not see humans as equals. It saw them as prey. Jinho thought about the children on New Incheon. He thought about the families who had built homes there, planted gardens, raised their sons and daughters under alien stars. He thought about what would happen to them when the Vrelak arrived, and somewhere deep inside him, something that had been sleeping for a very long time began to wake up. He did not know it yet. But the galaxy was about to change forever. The long patience of humanity was finally coming to an end. And when it ended, the universe would remember. The sky above New Incheon was burning. Governor Baek Minji stood on the balcony of the Colonial Administration Building and watched the Vrelak fleet descend through the clouds. 40 warships, each one larger than any human vessel ever built. They moved slowly, like predators who knew their prey had nowhere to run. Minji was 38 years old. She had been governor for only 3 years, but she had loved this colony. From the moment she first set foot on it, New Incheon was beautiful. Green hills, crystal rivers, forests full of strange and wonderful creatures. 2 million people called this world home. They had built cities and farms and schools. They had created something worth protecting, and now the Vrelak had come to take it all away. Her assistant rushed onto the balcony. "Governor, we are receiving a transmission from the Vrelak fleet commander." Minji nodded and walked back inside. The main screen in her office flickered to life, showing the face of a Vrelak officer. His gray skin was covered with old scars, and his forearms were crossed over his chest. "Humans of New Incheon," he said, his voice cold and flat. "This world now belongs to the Vrelak Empire. You have 6 hours to evacuate. Any humans remaining after that time will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." The screen went dark. Minji stood very still. 6 hours. There were 2 million people on this planet. They had maybe 50 transport ships. Even if every ship flew without stopping, they could evacuate perhaps 10,000 people. Maybe less. 6 hours was not an evacuation order. It was a death sentence. She turned to her assistant. "Get me Sergeant Lee Tae-woo, and prepare to broadcast on all channels." Tae-woo arrived within minutes. He was an old soldier, 57 years old, with gray hair and a face like weathered stone. He had 400 soldiers under his command, 400 soldiers against 40 warships. "You know why I called you," Minji said. Tae-woo nodded slowly. "We cannot win, Governor. You know that." "I know." Minji's voice was steady. "But I am not going to run. And I am not going to tell 2 million people to lie down and die quietly. If the Vrelak want this world, they will have to fight for it." For a long moment, Tae-woo said nothing. Then, slowly, a small smile crossed his old face. "I was hoping you would say that." 1 hour later, Minji stood before a camera. Her message would be broadcast across the entire colony, and beyond to every human world, every station, every ship that could receive it. She took a deep breath and began to speak. People of New Incheon. People of Earth. People of every human colony across the stars. My name is Baek Minji, and I am the governor of this world. The Vrelak have given us 6 hours to leave our homes, 6 hours to abandon everything we have built, 6 hours to accept that we are nothing. She paused. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was not. I will not leave. I will not run. I will not teach my children that humans must bow whenever a stronger species tells us to. We did nothing wrong. We broke no laws. We threatened no one, and still they come to take our world. Still they come to kill us. Tears were forming in her eyes now, but she did not wipe them away. If you want this world, she said, staring directly into the camera, you will have to kill us for it. The message spread like fire. Within minutes, it was playing on screens across the galaxy. Humans watched in silence. Some wept, some prayed, and some began to feel something they had not felt in a very long time. Anger. Far away, in the darkness between stars, Captain Kang Do-hyun sat on the bridge of the HSS Resolve. His ship was small, just a patrol frigate with a crew of 42. They were the only human warship within range of New Incheon. Sir, said Ensign Choi Eunbi, his communications officer, I am picking up the governor's broadcast. Do-hyun listened to Minji's words. When she finished, he sat in silence for a long time. Ensign, he finally said, contact Admiral Jinho. Maximum encryption. Eunbi worked quickly. Moments later, Jinho's face appeared on the screen. The Admiral looked older than Do-hyun remembered. Tired. But there was something in his eyes that had not been there before. Captain Kang, Jinho said, I assume you have seen the situation. Yes, Admiral. The Vrelak will begin their attack within hours. My ship is the only one in range. What are your orders? Jinho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm but heavy with meaning. Hold your position, Captain. Reinforcements are coming. Do-hyun blinked. Admiral, with respect, the nearest fleet is 3 days away. Even at maximum speed, I said reinforcements are coming. Jinho leaned closer to the screen. All of them. Do-hyun did not understand. But something in the Admiral's voice made him believe. Yes, sir. We will hold. The connection ended. Do-hyun turned to his crew. Every face on the bridge was watching him. You heard the Admiral, he said. We hold. On New Incheon, the 6 hours passed. The Vrelak did not wait a minute longer. The first orbital strikes hit the capital city at exactly midnight. Buildings collapsed. Streets turned to rivers of fire and broken stone. People screamed and ran. But there was nowhere to go. Tae-woo and his soldiers fought back with everything they had. They set up defensive positions in the rubble, firing at landing craft with weapons that could barely scratch Vrelak armor. They knew they could not win. They fought anyway. In the chaos, Ensign Eunbi did something that would change history. She managed to patch into every major broadcast frequency in the Concorde, not just human channels, but Vrelak, Mithrani, Orvan, and dozens of others, and she began to transmit. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in real time as the Vrelak bombed civilian shelters. They watched Vrelak soldiers march through burning streets. They watched human children crying in the arms of their parents. They watched old men and women trying to drag wounded neighbors to safety. They watched the massacre of New Incheon. The Vrelak commander did not care about the broadcast. Why would he? Humans were weak. Humans were nothing. The galaxy would watch, and the galaxy would learn its place. But the commander made a mistake. A terrible mistake. He forgot that humans were watching too. On Earth. In Luna Command. In colonies spread across 1,000 light years. Humanity watched their people die. They watched their children burn. They watched everything they had feared finally happen, and something inside them broke. Not broke like glass, broke like a dam. 120 years of patience. 120 years of swallowed pride and quiet hope. All of it washed away in a flood of cold, clear rage. The day humanity said enough was not marked by speeches or ceremonies. It was marked by silence. A terrible, terrible silence. And then, across every human world, the preparations began. President Moon Soo-ji had not slept in 36 hours. She sat in the war room beneath the presidential palace in Seoul, watching the footage from New Incheon play on the massive screens before her. The images were almost too terrible to look at. Burning cities, dead children, human soldiers making their last stand against an enemy they could not defeat. Around her sat the most powerful leaders on Earth, military commanders, colonial governors connected via hologram, scientists, diplomats, all of them silent, all of them watching. Suji was 61 years old. She had spent her entire life in politics, fighting small battles, winning small victories, always careful, never to push too hard, always careful to keep the peace. But there could be no peace now. Not after this. How many dead? She asked quietly. Fleet Admiral Oh Sun-woo, the Supreme Commander of the United Human Navy, answered. He was a tall man with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much war. At least 80,000 confirmed. The count is still rising. The Vrelek are systematically destroying every shelter they find. Suji closed her eyes. 80,000. And by the time help arrived, it would be much worse. The Galactic Concord? She asked. Silent, said Ambassador Yunhana. She had returned from the assembly just hours ago. Her face was pale and her hands trembled slightly. But her voice was cold as ice. I requested emergency intervention. They refused. The Vrelek delegate said this was an internal matter. Internal matter, Suji repeated. The murder of millions is an internal matter. No one spoke. Suji stood up slowly. She looked around the room at the faces of her people. She saw fear. She saw grief. But underneath all of that, she saw something else. She saw fury. 120 years, she said. Her voice was soft at first, but it grew stronger with every word. 120 years we have been part of their concord. We followed their rules. We paid their taxes. We accepted their insults. We told ourselves that someday, if we were patient enough, good enough, quiet enough, they would accept us. End quote. She walked toward the main screen, where the burning streets of New Incheon flickered in the darkness. Today they showed us what they truly think of humanity. They think we are prey. They think we are cattle. They think they can kill our children, burn our cities, and we will do nothing but cry. She turned to face the room. No more. The words hung in the air like thunder. Madam President, said one of the generals, his voice careful. If we act against the Vrelak, we will be at war with the most powerful species in the galaxy. Our fleet is outnumbered 20-1. We cannot. Admiral Sun-woo, Suji interrupted. It is time. The room went quiet. Sun-woo stood up slowly, and something in his expression made everyone pay attention. What you are about to see, he said, is classified at the highest level. For the past 60 years, humanity has maintained a public fleet of approximately 300 warships. This is what the Concord knows about. This is what they believe is the full extent of our military power. He pressed a button on the table. The screens changed, showing a massive star map dotted with thousands of blue lights. They are wrong. A murmur spread through the room. Hidden in asteroid fields, in empty systems, in places the Concord never thought to look. We have been building, preparing, waiting for the day we prayed would never come. The blue lights began to organize themselves into fleet formations. The number at the bottom of the screen climbed higher and higher. 3,000 warships, 100 dreadnoughts of a new class we call Vengeance, weapons systems that we reverse-engineered from conquered technology and then improved beyond anything they have ever seen. Stealth fighters that can pass through their sensor nets like ghosts. The room was completely silent. We built this in secret because we knew the truth. We knew that someday, the Concord would come for us. We knew that patience would not protect us forever, and we knew that when that day came, we would have to be ready. Sun-woo looked directly at President Suji. Madam President, we are ready. Suji felt tears burning in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Not yet. Send the signal, she said. All ships, all personnel. Operation Reckoning is active. Within seconds, the message began to spread. It traveled through secure channels, bouncing from station to station, planet to planet. Every human ship received it. Every human soldier, every human colony. The message was simple. This is not a drill. Operation Reckoning is active. All units report to designated stations. The time has come. Across the galaxy, humans stopped what they were doing and looked up. Miners on distant asteroids, engineers on space stations, farmers on colony worlds, teachers, doctors, children, they all knew what the message meant. The long patience was over. In the Galactic Assembly, Ambassador Hana walked through the golden halls one final time. The delegates were gathering for a routine session. They did not know what was happening. They did not know what was coming. Hana entered the chamber and walked directly to the speaking platform. She did not wait for permission. The assembly speaker, a Mithrani elder, clicked his mandibles in annoyance. The human representative has not been recognized. You will return to your seat. Hana ignored him. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her diplomatic credentials, the small golden badge that marked her as Earth's voice in the Concord. She held it up so everyone could see. Then she dropped it on the floor. The sound echoed through the chamber. For 15 years, she said, her voice ringing clear, I have stood in this room and begged for justice. I have asked for nothing but fairness. And you have laughed at me. You have mocked me. You have told me that humans are tolerated, not respected. She looked up at the Vrelek section. Torvan was staring at her with cold amusement. You wanted to know what humanity is capable of when pushed too far. A small, terrible smile crossed her face. You are about to find out. She turned and walked toward the exit. Torvan laughed. Let her go. What can the humans do? Their fleet is nothing. Their worlds are weak. They are. One of his aides rushed forward, his face pale. He whispered something in Torvan's ear. The laughter stopped. What? Torvan grabbed the aide and pulled him closer. That is impossible. It is confirmed. High Delegate. Human fleets are mobilizing across every sector. Thousands of ships. They are moving toward our positions. Torvan looked at the door through which Hana had just walked. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he had never expected to feel. Fear. Across the galaxy, the hidden fleets of humanity emerged from their hiding places, from asteroid fields and empty moons, from the dark spaces between stars. They powered up their engines and began to move. 3,000 warships, 100 dreadnoughts, and at the head of them all, aboard the massive HSS Indomitable, Admiral Park Jinho looked out at the stars and spoke 4 words. Today, we fight back. The Vrelek commander at New Incheon was named Korax. He had served the Empire for 200 years and had conquered 37 worlds. He feared nothing. He had never lost a battle. When his sensors detected incoming ships, he did not worry. Probably a few human patrol vessels coming to die with their colony. He ordered his communications officer to open a channel so he could mock them before destroying them. Human vessels, he said, leaning back in his command chair. You have made a foolish decision. Turn back now and we may show mercy. Stay, and you will burn with the rest of your pathetic species. There was no response. Korax frowned. How many ships? His sensor officer was staring at his console. His hands were shaking. Officer. How many ships? Commander. The officer's voice was barely a whisper. 800. Korax sat up straight. That is impossible. The humans do not have 800 ships in their entire fleet. 800 confirmed, Commander. More signatures appearing. They are everywhere. The view screen changed to show the space around New Incheon, and Korax saw something that would haunt him for the rest of his very short life. The darkness was full of ships. Human ships. They dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, wave after wave after wave. Small frigates, heavy cruisers, and at the center of the formation, something Korax had never seen before, dreadnoughts. Massive vessels, bristling with weapons, each one the size of a small moon. Their hulls were painted black, and their names were written in bright white letters. HSS, Indomitable. HSS, Retribution. HSS, Never Again. Admiral Jinho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked at the Vrelak fleet. 40 ships. They looked so small now. Open a channel, he said. Channel open, Admiral. Jinho spoke calmly, his voice carrying across the void to every Vrelak vessel. This is Admiral Park Jinho of the United Human Navy. You have attacked our colony. You have murdered our people. You have one chance to withdraw. You will not receive another. Silence. Then Korax's voice crackled through the speakers, full of false bravado. You dare threaten us? The Vrelak Empire will crush you like the insects you are. Jinho did not respond. He simply nodded to his weapons officer. The battle lasted 47 minutes. It was not a fight. It was a lesson. Human weapons cut through Vrelak shields like they were made of paper. Human fighters, sleek and fast, danced around Vrelak gun placements and tore them apart. Human tactics, developed over decades of secret preparation, left the Vrelak confused and helpless. One by one, the Vrelak ships fell. Some tried to retreat. Human vessels blocked their escape routes. Some tried to surrender. Jinho accepted their surrender. Because humanity was not like them. When it was over, all 40 Vrelak ships were either destroyed or captured. Not a single human vessel was lost. Korax was among the survivors. He was dragged onto the Indomitable in chains and brought before Admiral Jinho. His forearms hung limp at his sides. His eyes were empty. Impossible. He whispered, "This is impossible." Jinho looked at him without hatred, without anger. Only cold certainty. "You made a mistake," Jinho said. "You thought our patience was weakness. You thought our silence was fear. You were wrong." He turned away. "Take him to the holding cells. He will face trial for his crimes." As Korax was dragged away, Jinho looked out at New Incheon. The planet was still burning in places, but the Vrelak bombardment had stopped. Human dropships were already descending through the atmosphere. On the surface, Sergeant Lee Tae-woo was still fighting. His 400 soldiers had been reduced to less than 200. They were out of ammunition, out of supplies, out of hope. Tae-woo himself had been wounded 3 times, blood soaked through the bandages on his arm and leg, but they were still fighting. They had taken cover in the ruins of a school building, using broken desks and collapsed walls as barricades. A Vrelak ground force was advancing toward them, and there was nothing left to stop it. Tae-woo loaded his last clip. "It has been an honor," he said to his soldiers. Then the sky split open. Human dropships screamed down through the clouds, their guns blazing. Vrelak soldiers scattered as missiles tore through their ranks. Landing craft touched down, and fresh human troops poured out, shouting battle cries. Tae-woo stared in disbelief. A young officer ran up to him, grabbed his hand, and shook it fiercely. "Sergeant Lee, command sent us. Sorry we took so long." For the first time in 3 days, Tae-woo laughed. Governor Baek Minji was found in the basement of the administration building, surrounded by a group of children she had been protecting. When the rescue team opened the door, she looked up with eyes red from crying and smoke. "Is it over?" she asked. The team leader, a woman named Commander Yu Bora, knelt down beside her. Bora was the leader of the elite Ghost Wing Squadron. She had personally destroyed 6 Vrelak warships that day. "It is over," Bora said gently. "You are safe now. All of you." Minji broke down completely. She had held herself together for so long through the ultimatum, through the broadcast, through 3 days of bombardment. Now, finally, she let herself cry. The children huddled around her, and the rescue team stood guard, giving her this moment of release. Across the galaxy, the rest of Operation Reckoning unfolded with the same devastating precision. Human fleets struck at Vrelak military installations in 12 different systems. They destroyed weapons factories. They captured supply depots. They disabled communication networks, but they did not attack civilians. At Vrelak Prime, the homeworld of the Empire, Commander Bora led the Ghost Wing in the most daring operation of the war. Her squadron slipped past every sensor, every patrol, every defense satellite. They reached the Vrelak Home Fleet's flagship, a massive vessel called the Eternal Dominion, without being detected. They could have destroyed it. One missile in the right place, and the pride of the Vrelak Navy would have been space dust. Instead, they disabled its engines, its weapons, its shields. They left it floating helplessly in orbit around the Vrelak homeworld. A crippled giant for all to see. A message from humanity. We could destroy you. We are choosing not to. The Mithrani and Orvan immediately declared their neutrality. They wanted no part of this war. They had seen what humans could do when pushed too far, and they had no desire to find out what would happen if they became the next target. Within 72 hours of the start of Operation Reckoning, the Vrelak High Command did something unprecedented in their 10,000-year history. They surrendered. The message was broadcast across every channel, in every language. The Vrelak Empire requests immediate ceasefire negotiations. We acknowledge our actions against the human colony of New Incheon and accept responsibility for the consequences. Admiral Jinho received the surrender aboard the Indomitable. He read it twice, then set it down on his desk. "Send a response," he told his communications officer. "Tell them that humanity accepts their request, but make one thing very clear. Yes, Admiral. Jinho looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, New Incheon was beginning to heal. Somewhere out there, human children who should have died were sleeping safely in their parents' arms. Tell them this is not forgiveness, he said quietly. This is the beginning of a new era. And in this era, humanity will never again be prey. The message was sent, and across the galaxy, for the first time in history, the other species looked at humanity not with contempt or pity or amusement. They looked at them with respect, and perhaps, just a little, with fear. 6 months had passed since the day humanity said enough. The galaxy was different now. The galactic concord, which had ruled the stars for 10,000 years, was gone. In its place, something new was being built. Something better. The signing of the Terran Accords took place on neutral ground, a space station orbiting a quiet star far from any homeworld. Representatives from every species gathered in a circular chamber designed specifically for this moment. No one sat higher than anyone else. No one had better seats. For the first time in galactic history, all species stood as equals. President Moon Suji represented humanity. She was tired. The past 6 months had aged her. But when she stepped forward to sign the document, her hand was steady, and her eyes were clear. These accords, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, are built on a simple idea. No species is born to rule. No species is born to serve. We are all travelers in this universe. And we must learn to travel together. She signed her name. One by one, the other representatives followed. The Vrelek delegate was the last to sign. He was not Torvan, that one had been removed from power and was awaiting trial for his role in the New Incheon massacre. This delegate was younger, and there was no arrogance in his eyes, only the weight of defeat and, perhaps, the first stirrings of understanding. When the last signature was complete, there was no applause, no celebration, only silence, and the knowledge that history had been made. The celebrations would come later. For now, there was too much work to do. Admiral Park Jin-ho retired from military service 2 weeks after the accords were signed. He had spent 43 years in uniform, and he was tired in a way that sleep could not fix. On his last day, he stood once more on the observation deck of Luna Command, watching Earth turn slowly in the darkness, the same place he had stood 6 months ago, when everything began. Captain Kang Do-hyun found him there. Admiral, Do-hyun said, I wanted to thank you for believing in us, for giving us the chance to fight. Jin-ho smiled, but it was a sad smile. I did not give you anything, Captain. You earned it. All of you. Will you miss it? The service? Jin-ho thought for a long moment. I will miss the people. I will not miss the fighting. He looked at Do-hyun. I spent my whole life preparing for a war I hoped would never come. Now that it is over, I find myself wondering what kind of man I would have been if I had never held a weapon. You would have been the same man, Do-hyun said quietly. A good man. That does not change. Jin-ho placed his hand on Do-hyun's shoulder. Take care of them, Captain. The next generation. Teach them what we learned. And what did we learn? Admiral, that strength is not about how hard you can hit. It is about knowing when not to hit at all. Ambassador Yoon Hana returned to diplomacy, as she had always known she would, but she did not return to the same position. She was now the leader of the new Galactic Assembly, where every species had an equal voice. The work was hard. Old hatreds did not disappear overnight. There were arguments, disagreements, and moments when it seemed like the whole fragile structure might collapse. But Hana kept going, kept talking, kept believing. Dr. Shin Nari worked beside her, building cultural exchange programs between species. She believed that the only way to prevent future wars was through understanding. If species learned about each other, learned to see each other as people rather than enemies, perhaps they would think twice before choosing violence. It will take generations, Nari told Hana one evening, as they reviewed proposals for new exchange initiatives. I know, Hana replied, but we have to start somewhere. On New Incheon, the rebuilding continued. Governor Baek Minji oversaw every detail personally. New buildings rose from the ashes of the old. Farms were replanted, schools reopened. Slowly, life returned to the wounded colony. The monument was completed on the 1-year anniversary of the attack. It stood in the center of the capital city, a tall pillar of white stone inscribed with the names of everyone who had died. At the base, Carved in letters that would never fade were the words, "For those who stood when standing was all they had." Minji stood before the monument on the day of its dedication. Thousands of people gathered behind her survivors, soldiers, children who had been born in the months since the war ended. "We did not ask for this fight," she said. "We did not want it. But when it came, we did not run. We stood. And because we stood, the galaxy learned that humanity cannot be ignored, cannot be dismissed, cannot be destroyed." She looked up at the names carved in stone. "They tried to break us. They failed. And they will never try again. Because now they know who we are. Now they know what we are capable of. And now they know that the price of attacking humanity is higher than any species can afford to pay." Sergeant Lee Tae-woo was in the crowd that day. He had been offered promotions, medals, command positions. He had refused them all. He was content to remain a sergeant, training the next generation of soldiers the same way he had trained the heroes of New Incheon. When people called him a hero, he shook his head. "The heroes are the ones who did not come home," he would say. "I just did my job." But his soldiers knew the truth. And they would carry his lessons with them for the rest of their lives. Years passed, then decades. The galaxy continued to change. New alliances formed. Old enemies became friends. Trade routes expanded. Knowledge was shared. Slowly, painfully, the species of the galaxy learned to live together. There were still conflicts, still disagreements, still dark moments when it seemed like war might return. But it never did. Something had changed on the day humanity said enough. Something fundamental. The other species had learned a lesson they would never forget. 50 years after the end of the war, a Vrelak historian named Toravel published a book about the conflict. It was required reading in schools across the galaxy. The final chapter ended with these words: "We called them primitive. We called them weak. We called them insects, cattle, prey. For 120 years, they accepted our insults with patience we mistook for submission. They endured our cruelty with silence we mistook for fear. We were wrong. The humans were never weak. They were waiting. They were hoping that we would see them as equals. That we would choose peace over violence. That we would prove ourselves worthy of the civilization we claimed to represent. We failed that test. And on the day humanity said enough, the galaxy learned a truth it will never forget. There is no species more dangerous than one that has been patient for too long. There is no force more powerful than dignity denied and then reclaimed. There is no enemy more terrible than one who has nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The humans did not destroy us. They could have. They chose not to. And in that choice, they showed us what true strength really means. They showed us that power without mercy is not power at all. They showed us that the strongest species is not the one with the biggest weapons, but the one that knows when not to use them. They showed us what we could have been, if we had been wise enough to treat them as equals from the beginning. We were not wise. We paid the price. And now, 50 years later, we are still learning from them. Perhaps that is the greatest victory of all. Not the battle they won, but the lesson they taught us. The day humanity said enough was not the end of their story. It was the beginning of ours. And across the galaxy, in human homes and alien homes alike, children grew up learning that same lesson. That patience is a virtue, but so is self-respect. That peace is precious, but not at any price. That true strength is not measured in weapons or ships, but in the courage to stand when standing is all you have. The universe was vast and dark and full of dangers. But somewhere in that darkness, one small species had lit a fire that would never go out. Humanity had finally said enough, and the galaxy would never forget.